What is pareidolia and what does it have to do with ghost hunting? Find out in this episode of Josh's Cemetery Chats. Welcome back to the least professional channel on YouTube, and welcome to Josh's Cemetery Chats. How's everybody doing today? So today, like I said in the opening, we're talking about pareidolia and what it has to do with ghost hunting. So pareidolia is basically your mind's way of making patterns where there is nothing actually there. So for instance, when you're out ghost hunting and you've got a recorder and you're walking around and you're recording sounds, whether it's on the microphone for the camera or on the microphone in your hand, every once in a while you'll pick up something that when you play it back, it sounds like it might be words. Now the reason for this is because your brain is trying to recognize a pattern. Sometimes that can be based on prior information and things that you maybe expected to hear, and sometimes it won't be related to anything at all. For instance, there's been times that I've been walking around the cemetery with a voice recorder and not really expecting anything in particular, and I wound up, when I got back and started listening to that recording, hearing something that sounded like words being spoken. A good example of this was when I was at Green Lawn Cemetery a few years ago, walking around. It was back when I still believed in ghosts. I was walking around with the voice recorder, wasn't really expecting to hear anything in particular, and walking around just different headstones, not really paying attention to the names or anything like that. When I got home, I was listening back to the recording, trying to find something. And I wound up hearing what sounded like somebody saying, guilty. Now that could have pertained to any number of things, any number of people, if there was actually a person there, or a spirit there that was actually trying to communicate in some way. But knowing what I know now, looking back on it, when I heard that and it sounded to me like words, I realized it was my brain trying to make sense out of nothing. So anytime your brain takes audio input through your ears, the sound waves come into your ears, they hit your eardrum, and they vibrate on the inside, on the inner eardrum, and that sends a signal to your brain. And your brain is taking that sound in, and it's trying to process it and figure out what exactly was making the sound. Most of the time, because we're a social species, it's actually trying to decipher the sound and understand, is it words that's being spoken? And if it's a sound that doesn't make any sense, and you can't connect anything with it, your brain is likely to take it and say, okay, this was probably words being spoken. What was actually being spoken? You know, if you're an English speaker, you're going to hear an English word. If you're a non-English speaker, let's say you speak Spanish or French or Latin, you might hear words in different languages no matter where you're at. So you could be in the United States in a cemetery like in Ohio here and recording something, and you get a recording, and say you're not an English speaker. Let's say you speak Spanish as your primary language. And you could hear that word and you could say, oh, that sounds like a word, it sounds like hola, for instance. Whereas an English speaker who didn't know any Spanish might hear that word and think that it sounded like something else. Now sometimes the noise comes across so clear that multiple people can hear it, and it sounds like the same thing to them because it sounds like a very familiar word. Now when you're actively looking for ghosts and spirits and that kind of thing, this can be something that can be really exciting to hear something on a recording that you didn't expect to hear. And especially when the sound really sounds like a word. So if you get a recording and you hear it and it sounds like something, and you have your friend listen to it and they hear the same thing, and then you have a couple other people listen to it and they hear the same thing, does that mean that the spirit's talking? No, what it means is that the sound was so familiar to most people that speak the same language as you that they're going to hear the same thing. This isn't always the case. Sometimes people will hear completely different things. And when you're talking about videos, for instance, channels on YouTube or ghost hunting shows, especially ghost hunting shows, because they do this all the time. Rather than having you listen to the sound and interpret for yourself what you think it sounds like, they'll actually put something up on the screen telling you what was being said. So I can demonstrate that for you. So what I'll do, I will record a sound that's not spoken word. I won't tell you what's making the sound, but I'll record the sound and I'll drop it in the video right here. Now what I want you to do is I want you to listen to that sound, and if you have to, listen to it a couple of times, and then I want you to go down in the comments and I want you to tell me if you heard a word, and if you did hear a word, what word did you hear? So go ahead and do that right now. Okay, I'm going to assume that you've gone down in the comments and told me whether you heard a word and what the word was. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the sound again, but I'm going to put an interpretation of what it sounds like up on the screen. And I want you to tell me if it sounded like the word that you thought it sounded like initially. So So when you see the word that I put up on the screen in conjunction with the sound, did it match up to your initial interpretation of the sound? What did it sound like to you? Was there a difference there? If there was a difference in what you heard initially and what you heard when I put the words up on the screen, that's because now your brain is connecting the word that you're seeing with what you're hearing. Really? So if there was a difference in what you were hearing, Fred decided to take a nap. I keep trying to set him up. The wind's blowing. He decided he wanted to take a nap. He didn't like sitting up anymore. I'm just going to leave him like this for now. Let him rest. Maybe it's a punishment for him. I don't know. Like I was saying, if what you heard changed when you saw something on the screen, when you saw the word on the screen, that's because your brain is now connecting the visual with the auditory. So when your brain only has the auditory to work with, it's going to make whatever it thinks makes the most sense. But when you add in a visual element, it completely changes what your brain interprets it as. Because now your brain expects to hear a particular word, and that's what it's going to hear in the sound and the word when it sees the word on the screen. And this works within a number of things. Let's say you snap a twig, and somebody's facing away from you when you snap that twig. Now they might recognize the sound as a twig snapping, but it might take them a second to process what was that sound that I just heard, especially if it sounds just a little bit off. But now if they turn around and they watch you snap the twig, they're watching you do it, and there's no question at all about what it was. So that's where that's how our brains work when it comes to pareidolia, when it comes to pattern recognition, trying to comprehend and understand what sound is being made, adding the visual element in. The more information your brain can take in, the better it is at recognizing what exactly it's seeing or hearing when you don't have a lot of information to go off of. For instance, if you see a dog in the clouds and you're looking up at the sky, your brain sees that as a dog. It knows it's not, but it still recognizes that as a dog. And that especially will work if you hear a dog barking off in the distance while you're looking up at that, because now your brain's got auditory and visual information coming in. So it's saying, okay, this must be a dog. It's barking and it's, and it looks like a dog. Now you also know that it's not actually a dog because it's up in the clouds, and dogs typically don't live in the sky. But that's how your brain recognizes patterns, and that's why things like EVPs become such a big deal, because it's your brain's way of recognizing what it's hearing and trying to understand and comprehend the world around it. And that's one of the reasons why our brains are so unreliable when it comes to deciding and figuring out whether or not ghosts are real, because we can see things, we can hear things. Our brains can trick us into thinking we see or hear something, especially, if you're ghost hunting in the dark, for instance, you're going to see and hear a lot more things in the dark than you will if the lights are on and it's bright and it's daylight out, because your brain has more information to work with. If I'm standing out here in the cemetery and it's nighttime, for instance, and I hear a noise from over there, my brain is immediately going to start to wonder, what made that noise? I can't see anything. The noise sounded like this, and it's going to start to formulate a picture of what could have possibly made that noise. Now, if it's broad daylight and I hear a noise that comes from over there, I can look over and I can see, oh, there was a deer walking around. That's what made the noise. The deer stepped on a twig, or just the footsteps of the deer, depending on how far away it is, because I have more information to work with. So as opposed to jumping to the conclusion, and it especially works if you're particularly looking for ghosts, and it's dark, every little noise becomes a ghost. Every little thing you hear, oh, what was that? That was a ghost that made a noise. As opposed to in the daylight or in the light where you can see and you hear a noise and you can look over, you can see what made that noise, and it makes it a lot easier to figure out what's going on. So that's how our brains trick us, and that's how pattern recognition works, and how pareidolia fits in with all of this. So that's kind of how our brains work, and how pareidolia works, and how it fits into this whole ghost hunting thing. To me, as I've said before, I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm open to the possibility. If there is something out there that we don't know about yet, I want to try and figure it out. But what I know is that my brain, no matter how much I learn, my brain is never trustworthy when it comes to individual little things. Now I can trust, I see the trees back here, the color's changing, and I can trust that my brain is telling me the right thing. That there's a tree there, that the leaves are on it, that the color is changing. I can feel the air around me, so I know I'm in a physical location. So I can kind of trust that. Getting other people involved, getting, having my wife point out and say, yeah, there is a tree there, in fact. Having other people to back that assumption up goes a long way into helping me to trust what my brain is telling me. But I still know that if I'm the only one that heard something, something's off. And I know that if I hear something, it's a sound, that my brain is interpreting that sound in the way that it wants to interpret it to sound like a word. So I can't trust that it's actually a person saying that word, because it might just be pareidolia. If I can't see them speaking to me, if I don't know that I'm talking to a person directly, if I'm by myself somewhere and I hear what sounds like words being spoken, I can't trust that that's a person. I can't trust that it's a ghost or a spirit, because there's no evidence that ghosts or spirits exist. So by default, I have to go to, okay, that was pareidolia. I heard something, my brain interpreted it as one thing, but I don't really think it's that. So it's a matter of trust and a matter of being able to understand what is causing these different things. If we knew for sure that ghosts exist, if we had some way to prove them, and know that they could actually communicate, the voice recorders, for instance, if we knew that, say, spirits spoke on a frequency that the voice recorders could pick up, but we couldn't auditorily hear through our ears, that would be a whole different thing. To be able to look at that and say, okay, maybe this was a ghost that said something. But because we don't know, we don't have any other proof or evidence for ghost existence, we can't then make the leap that, oh, the sound that I didn't recognize, that was a ghost. Okay, before I close out, I'm going to fix Fred, because he looks really uncomfortable right now. Okay, let's see if he stays up here this time. He only has to sit for a couple more minutes. Okay, so I want to thank you all for watching. Yesterday and the day before, I've released a couple of videos this week already. I did a Halloween video on Sunday. I did a comments video yesterday, so I'm trying to up some of that stuff a little bit. I'm planning on doing another cemetery chat for this Friday. I don't know yet, though. May or may not have a cemetery chat. I'll have something coming out Friday, even if it's not a cemetery chat. I'm experimenting with a couple other ideas of different things that I want to do, just so that I can have some content coming out, because I really enjoy making these videos. I enjoy the process, and I enjoy the feedback. Like I said in the comments video, I absolutely love seeing your guys' comments and chatting with you and interacting with you. That makes my day. I love everything about that. So with that being said, I do also want to note, I am going to continue the story that has been going on at the beginning of these chats. I don't know that I'm going to do it at the beginning of the chats anymore, though. I'm about 90% sure that I'm going to release them as their own standalone videos, 3 to 4 minutes long, maybe 5 at the longest, because I do have a story that I'm working on, a story arc, and I want to tell this story because it's fun for me. It's something where I can be creative. So I do want to get that out there. So just keep an eye out in the next couple of weeks for something like that that's going to be coming out. The next Legends and Tales video, right now, as of this moment, is looking like it's going to be somewhere around the end of November. I'm trying to relate it to Thanksgiving in some way, because in the U.S., Thanksgiving is the last Thursday in November. That's a big holiday. So I'm going to try and relate it to that somehow. I'm just not 100% sure yet how I'm going to do that. So keep an eye out for that. I'll have more information coming soon. But yeah, I don't really have anything else. I do want to thank you all for watching. I'll put a link to the Cemetery Chat playlist up here somewhere. And then if you've seen most of those, or you're not sure what you want to watch, maybe you don't want to watch the whole playlist next, I'll also have a video down here that's actually going to be the one that Fred here recommends to you. Hopefully now that he's had a nap, he'll have a good recommendation. So check those out, and I will see you all in the next one.